Well, it's fantastic to be here and to be with people who are thinking about a better world. I think this is the best time in the history of humanity to be alive. For all of you, and I hope for me too, we should have a better life expectation than anyone before. And hopefully this won't only be for us, but it'll be for more people in the world than ever before. And the key question is, of course, can it be for everyone? And can we not only have longer lives, and you've heard from Aubrey and Marcus about some of the frontiers of that, but can we actually have better lives? In a sense, more meaningful lives that fulfill our dreams, whatever they are. And hopefully those dreams aren't only for ourselves, but for the whole of the world. So what I want to give you is some glimpses of how this may evolve over the next 40 years. And that seems like a long time, but I hope that virtually all of us will still be around then. And when you look back on this incredible Secret Garden Party weekend, you can think, well, how wrong did we get it? Because we'll certainly be wrong. Certainly what we imagine now about the future won't happen. And that's not because you aren't the smartest people, and it might not even be because you work with information sets that are really at the frontier, that you are able to suck in off the web the absolute frontiers of humanity. It's because even the best minds with the best institutions get it wrong. And so it has been that Bill Gates famously said, there only have to be like 1,000 computers in the world. And all the inventors always get their inventions wrong. So we'll be wrong. The question is how wrong, and will we be wrong on the fundamentals? And what I'm hoping is that when you leave the Secret Garden Party, you'll shape the future yourselves. So actually the best way to make sure the future happens in a way you want it to is to do it yourself. And that's the only way to really make sure that 2050 will be a year where we're not bombarded by horrible things, if we're alive, but that we live in a world that we want to make it. And so as we think about the future, don't think about predictions. And if I keep lapsing into predictions, throw paper airplanes at me or something, because we're not good at that. And what I found in my lifetime, and I was one of those South Africans that came to England thinking I would never ever go back in my lifetime, and then a dream did come true and I went back to work with President Mandela. And that taught me that actually if you fight hard enough, you do get what you want in the future, and that you can shape it. So it's important that, of course, Thatcher and MI5 and MI6 didn't see that, but even the big institutions in other areas. So we've just lived through this financial crisis. There are more people with good degrees working on global finance than there are about anything else in the world. Over 20,000 PhD economists whose job it is to guarantee global financial stability. And none of these institutions, like the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank for International Settlements, the central banks, the treasuries, none of them saw this coming. So we're in for surprises. And we're certainly going to be in for surprises that are going to be much tougher to manage than the financial crisis. The financial crisis is the first of the 21st century crises. This is what the world will be like. Systemic shocks that come out of places we don't expect, hitting us in ways that we don't understand. And can we prepare for them? And how do we mitigate them? And the reason there'll be more surprises is because of globalization. And the wonders of the Secret Garden Party, where you really get a feel that we're part of a global community, the wonders of the internet, the wonders of our lives in which we can consume and understand things that are going around the world, has made us what we are. It's the reason why this is the best time in history to be alive. It's because we've become part, for the first time in our history, of a global community. For the first time, we actually feel a common humanity. So when the earthquake struck in Haiti, within 1 week, people from 100 countries had given money to try and support Haiti. That has never happened in history. We do feel, and we are part of, for the first time in our lives and the world's life, we are part of a community that really can have information and solidarity with what's happening elsewhere. And that, of course, has led to enormous community well-being, but it's also led to huge economic progress. It's the reason why more people have been brought out of poverty over the last 20 years than ever before in history. I don't know if Marcus said this, but the average life expectancy of people in the world has grown by 20 years over the last 30 years. It took from the Stone Age to the 1980s to achieve that sort of progress. It took from the Stone Age to then to get half the people in the world to be literate. That's been halved again over the last 20 years. And any measure you look at, except, and this is a very, very big except, the environmental or sustainability measures, any measure you look at, things have improved. Whether it's literacy, whether it's life expectancy, whether it's infant mortality, whatever it is, things have got better. And that's because of globalization. So globalization has been the most amazing thing in any dimension except the sustainability ones. But interdependency, which is the flip side of globalization, is what we need to worry about. So integration good, interdependency bad. Interdependency, so if something happens in one place, we feel the impact very quickly. And what we have to ensure as a global community that cares about the future is that nothing happens terribly anywhere in the world. So the responsibility is lifted from your own community to a global responsibility, because anything can affect all of us. We really are one humanity in a way that was just not conceivable before the era of globalization. The big question is, will we become more or less globalized? Are we going to splinter apart, or are we going to become a more tight community? And I hope we become closer. I hope we become closer because I think it brings us immeasurable benefits. But we have to accept that closeness means if you get a cough, so do I. If you get a pandemic, so do I. With every village, there's incredible community. What you really have to worry about in this era is the village idiots. Okay? And in any village, who are the village elders that are managing them? And we'll come back to this. So I just want to highlight how special this time is with two very, very crude measures of the world's progress. One is income and the other is population. And note, for those of you that absorb from Marcus some mathematical bent, that this is an exponential scale on income. So we live in a period that the world only saw about 1,000 years ago. And this was a period when Islamic and Christian civilizations came together. It was an explosion, a renaissance of coming together. Why these events are so important is because people leapfrog. You sit in your community, you sit in your society, developing ideas over a very long period of time, and then suddenly you meet someone else, and they say, hey, I've been thinking about something different, we've been developing something different. You share ideas, and together, the sum of your community is much bigger than the individual parts before. And that's how progress happens in the world. And that happened when Islamic and Christian civilizations met each other about 1,000 years. And it's happened in the big cities, as you know, from Venice and Amsterdam and London. When people come together, you get explosive creativity. And it's happening now because of globalization. It's happening because the walls are falling down, because the Berlin Wall fell down, because China's opened up, because 65 countries in the world ended dictatorships in the last 20 years. It's happening because of fiber optics and technology. And it's happening certainly because of policy, the opening up of markets, the end of protectionism, the opening up of ideas, including intellectual property. So opening up leads to explosive growth. And of course, that's why China and India have grown over the last 20 years at rates that have never been seen in the history of the world before, 10% a year. At 10% a year, it means your incomes are doubling every 10 years or less. That's phenomenal. It's the way that societies escape poverty, if it's inclusive. So globalization has been extraordinary, and it's allowed other things to happen as well, including population growth. But population is one of the big surprises about the future, because I think in 40 years' time, we're going to have too few people, not too many on the planet. And of course, that's a very, very controversial idea, and we come back to it in discussion. But look at these UN population projections going out to 2050. There's a range of uncertainty of 4 billion people. The UN doesn't know whether we're going to be around 8.5 billion people or around 12 billion people by 2050, only 40 years from now. That's a big difference. We're now about 6.9 billion people on the planet, so that's almost 2/3 of the current population. Obviously, that's like another planet's worth of people on many, many indicators, not least because we'll all be consuming more. So this is really important. I actually think that it's more likely to be at the lower end. And you'll see what the implications and why that is. Now, when you run this through, you see the most extraordinary developments. And this is just Italy, but it's symptomatic of many, many countries in the future. And what you see with this, you move from this structure to that structure. And when you get that, you have very, very few people at the bottom of the population pyramid. The idea with this is that you're going to have very few young people supporting growing numbers of elderly going forward. So fertility rates are declining rapidly. The average life expectancy, as I think you would have heard from Aubrey, is increasing by at least 2 years per decade. So the good news about this secret garden party, amongst the many other things it's going to do for you, while you're here, say you're here for the 3 days, your life expectancy is going to increase by about 90 minutes. So don't worry too much what you're doing. Your life expectancy is going to increase, especially if you stay up to speed afterwards about public health, wear a condom, wear safety belts on your way home. All these things that we know about public knowledge increases your life expectancy, and those are improving all the time, as well as the medications and technologies, and I'll show you some of those. So life expectancy is increasing, and fertility is plummeting. So average fertility in the world is going to be well below replacement level in about 20 years' time. It already is in about 15 countries. Already less people being born than the number of reproductive parents. Okay, so a fertility rate which is stable is about 2.1, 2.2, because not everyone reaches adulthood per woman. When you go down to 0.8, 0.9, which is what you have in many, many societies, far less people are being born than the number of parents they have. So that is a dramatic change in the world that is happening over this period. And by 2025, already most regions will have not replacement level, and only Africa is going to be replacement level by about 2030. So far fewer people being born, and also what you get in sexist societies, like parts of China, people are basically selecting if you're only going to have one kid, to have a boy. So many provinces of China, 1.3 boys to every girl at the age of 5. That's, of course, an absolute disaster, because then you get a vicious circle as well on fertility with fewer girls. And that's another powerful reason, amongst the many, many other, even more powerful reasons, why one should have non-sexist societies, so that people are happy to have girls if they're only having one child. Fewer people being born and people living longer and longer and longer. The implication of that clearly is huge burden on the youth for the elderly. So average life expectancy into the 90s, into the hundreds, fewer and fewer young people. All our concepts of retirement, of pensions, of social obligations in adulthood will go out the window with that. So we need to stay healthy, and we need to stay active, and we need to stay productive, and don't expect that someone's going to look after you when you're 90, at least not the state, because the state will not be able to do that, and nor will a private company in your pension form. So having that sort of dynamic in society will change the contract. Of course, the number of people that are elderly relative to the number of people that are young will also change fundamentally, so the elderly will be powerful. As you all age, you will control the world, because there'll be far fewer young people at the voting polls. So you'll have power, and the societies will transform with that over time. So one major challenge is this demographic challenge, and the most of the elderly will, of course, be in Asia. So this is 700 million people over the age of 65 in Asia by 2025. The rate of growth is virtually the same in different regions, it's just the sheer numbers. So what are these 700 million people over the age of 65 going to be doing in 2025? Hopefully there'll be secret garden parties for them all over Asia. One of the big changes is going to be migration. Obviously, many of us want fewer migrants now because we're worried about our jobs and things like that. I think that's crazy.